Greetings Exiles and welcome to yet another build guide. Do you want to play the build that has been in my personal top 3 since its main ability was released? Do you like huge damage and a fast and efficient playstyle? Are you interested in one of the strongest allrounder builds that has been below the radar for several weeks now? Then the Storm Brand Inquisitor might just be the build you are looking for. First of all, this is a path of building assisted build. If you don't know how to use the program, I got a video linked in the description together with some timestamps. All footage you can see is at Awakening level 8 on tier 14 plus maps and boss encounters. The biggest strength of this build is the skill Storm Brand itself. The utility you gain from using the skill only a couple of times within a minute when using brand recall to its maximum effect is undeniably amongst the best in the game. Storm Brand itself has built-in chaining, making it clear on its own and opening the possibility to kill packs at multiple locations in the same time, because you can have up to 5 brands active. The Ascendancy Inquisitor allows to go more efficiently since no penetration is necessary to kill tough enemies and bosses. The brands will stick to a target for up to 5 seconds, meaning during that time you can focus on either debuffing bosses or simply dodge and regenerate. These two effects, consistent maximum damage and the utility to move around while killing, make this build an excellent bosser if you don't face tank every mechanic. There's nothing this build can't do with high efficiency, which is why I rate this as the best all-rounder build in the game. All of this obviously doesn't come with any drawbacks. First of all, you are not a tank. Most of your defense comes from the playstyle and the ability to stay far away from dangerous enemies. Also, to play the skill combination of Storm Brand and Brand Recall, you need to get used to that first and you have to play well, otherwise you will sacrifice a lot of efficiency. That doesn't matter in low content, but once you reach tier 14 Awakening 8 maps, the difference in playstyle will have a huge difference in efficiency as well. The general playstyle itself is actually quite easy. You place the Storm Brand on top of a pack, then the Storm Brand kills the pack. After it killed the pack, it will chain to another pack in close proximity and so on. While this brand is active and chaining, you can already place a different brand on different enemies. The tricky part comes when you use brand recall, since the better you get, the more the playstyle evolves around using the skill Brand Recall to reposition your Storm Brands instead of placing the Storm Brands yourself. That was a really long and hard sentence for me, but overall I wanted to say that you can actually use Brand Recall as often as you can and only cast new brands after you just recalled. So Brand Recall to enemies close to you and then another new Storm Brand far away from you. This method will get you through most content with acceptable efficiency. If you want to get a bit more advanced, follow these 2 rules. Rule number 1, you want to position yourself in between packs and then use your recall. The first step in my wonderful and awesome drawing you can see is to identify 2 packs that are close together, but not close enough for brands to chain in between them. So if you would kill the first pack, the brands wouldn't automatically chain to the other pack. So that's like 2 close packs, but not too close. You see, your recall is ready, so you go to step 2. You flame dash to get in between the packs. And while you are in between the packs, you press recall. A few brands will then attach to one pack and another few of those brands will attach to the other pack. But imagine this, the moment you land with your flame dash, you notice a smaller pack further away from you in front of you. Now, step 3, cast a brand to the furthest pack a split second after you used your recall. With this method you will kill 3 packs at once. The 2 packs that are close to you because of the brand recall, chaining the brands there, and then the farther away one because you cast a new brand. Rule number 2, which is a lot easier and much more straightforward. If there are 2 packs far away from each other, so you can't use rule number 1 anymore, you jump close to the pack with the stronger enemies, so your recall brands will attach to this pack, and the split second after you recalled, you cast the brand to the other pack, to the weaker pack. This means more of your damage is focused on the strong enemies without sacrificing your insane clear speed of clearing multiple packs at the same time. I hope you understand what I just tried to tell you, and in the case you didn't, don't worry, you'll still be fine. A lot of improvement comes from just playing the ability, so just get into the game and play the build. So these strategies I just told you can also be used while leveling. You will obviously have a lot less cast speed and a lot longer cooldown on your brand recall, but the leveling is still super easy and fast. Storm Brand is actually my go-to on every spellcaster build I want to level without having to use any slow ability. You get the ability at level 12, so just at the end of Act 1, and before that I recommend you use a combination of Orb of Storms and Frost Bomb. So while running, you place a Frost Bomb in front of you, it will explode, and while the Frost Bomb is on cooldown, you place an Orb of Storms that will kill stuff, and then the Frost Bomb will be ready again, and then Orb of Storms again. I think you get the idea, until you get the Storm Brand, obviously. During the Bandit quest in Act 2, I always help Lyra. Especially for new players and on lower character levels, mana regen is super important for a smooth playstyle. And obviously resistances and crit multi are very valuable stats as well. As Ascendancy Progression, go for Righteous Providence and Inevitable Judgment first. These nodes together pretty much double your damage against tough enemies, which means enemies with resistances, also known as bosses. After that, go for Sanctuary and Pious Path. This grants you a lot of utility with mana regen and cast speed, damage from cast speed and the Consecrated Ground debuff, and damage in form of life regen from the Consecrated Ground, energy shield regen, and elemental ailment immunity. When looking at my gear within the Path of Building, you will notice that I have 2 item sets there. One is the starter, low budget version, and the other one is the damage focused, high investment version you can aim for if you decide to play this build for more than just 2 or 3 days. I will go over the starter gear in this build since that's enough to clear the whole game relatively easily, but as I said, if you want to bring this build to new heights, please check out my endgame gear. Actually, there's nothing special going on here in my starter gear. As weapons, I love playing with Doriani's Catalyst. These can be expensive early on into the league, and with expensive I mean like 20 to 40 chaos. They give cast speed, crit, elemental damage, and especially the elemental leech. Those are all stats that you really want. As a test piece, I recommend Impulsars. While not mandatory at all, this chest helps you clear speed and damage output, and it's also really satisfying to see the explosions. But any other rare chest with life, energy shield and resistances works as well. Talking about resistances, this is also the third thing you wanna take care of on your rare gear. You wanna reach the 75% elemental resistance cap on all your elemental resistances. Make sure you balance these rolls over all your items so you don't pay extra for any overpowered items early on. You will also need to get some attributes going like strength and dexterity, so make sure you don't forget those. After you sorted these things out, get as much life as possible. For even more defense, also get energy shield and chaos resistance. You might also notice that if you swap between my starter and my endgame gear, that life and energy shield are higher on my starter gear setup. That's because my endgame setup is focused pretty much purely on damage, and you can see that I nearly hit triple the damage of my starter gear. Also, something you don't want to forget on your gear is movement speed on the boots. On the ring, you want to make sure to craft added fire and added cold damage. This applies to Storm Brand, so you can ignite and chill enemies. Ignite is important for the Cinder Swallow Flask, and chill is important for the hypothermia support to work. The main defense role on your duels is life. Offensive options are global crit multi with spells, crit multi with elemental skills, crit multi while dual wielding, and crit multi with lightning skills. So yeah, crit multi is king for damage. Cast speed is also nice because it's not only damage but also utility, and also damage would be lightning added to spells. Looking at the flasks now, as always, and for every single life-based build, an instant life flask is a really good choice. It's kind of like a panic button. When you see your life drop, you just press it and you instantly regenerate some of your life. As for nearly every crit build, a diamond flask is a huge damage boost. Another damage flask is an Ascendancy Promise. It does not only grant strong damage from the elemental as extra chaos, but also leech and chaos resistance, which is welcome especially early on into the league when you don't really have the gear to go for chaos res. The last damage flask is a Cinder Swallow Urn. This is the mastermind flask, so it can be expensive early on into the league. And this flask is also the reason why you want your Storm Brand to be able to ignite with the small fire damage on your ring craft to get the most out of this flask. Also on the Cinder Swallow you can have different roles, like different unveiled mods. I like the movement speed here because movement speed is king when you want to clear maps. If you want more damage though, you can go for the crit, and for more defense you can go for the life regen. If you can't afford this flask, you can just get a normal magic silver flask, because Onslaught doesn't only grant you movement speed but also cast speed, which directly is damage for you, so get Onslaught. Also, you want to get Curse and Bleed immunity on your magic flasks. There's no need for Freeze immunity once you picked up your last Ascendancy, so you don't really need it, but it helps if you have it early on. Here you can see a slide I prepared to see a few anointments that I can suggest. There are not many offensive ones, but a lot of defensive. I like True Strike, especially early on, because it costs about nothing for what it grants. The crit chance helps to get your crit chance higher, obviously, and crit multi is always welcome, as you might have noticed during this build. You can also use any other anointment depending on your needs, like life or life regen, movement speed, phasing, evasion, energy shield, more cast speed. Just get whatever you feel like you want. Now it's time to take a closer look to all the skills I use in this build. Your main damage, as the name of the build suggests, is Storm Brand in your 6-link. You might ask, why control destruction if only crits deal meaningful damage? Well, that's simply because there is no real damage alternative. Elemental Focus would work, but if you use that, the Storm Brand can't chill or ignite anymore. And you wouldn't be able to shock anymore, so you wouldn't be able to use Hypothermia, you wouldn't be able to use the full effect from Cinder Swallow, and you wouldn't be able to use the Impulsar's explosion. So Ally Focus doesn't really work here. The Inspiration support is a really interesting alternative, but it's actually only better if you have close to 100% uptime on all charges, which can be hard since Storm Brand has a quite high mana cost, meaning that once you used up 800 mana from your or with your Storm Brand, you will use the charges, and then you have to recast Storm Brands to get the charges back. But since you don't cast Storm Brand that often, I don't like Inspiration here, but you can use it if you really want it. So for me, Control Destruction just makes the most sense. I also sometimes get asked, why would you take Energy Leech support in a build that's not focused around Energy Shield? That's actually a good question, but you usually don't take the support only because you can leech when you have the support, but because of the multipliers you get When you are at full energy shield, that's 24%. That's respectable. That's not a lot, but it's respectable. But in times of need, meaning when you take damage, when you are in a dangerous situation, you will deal even more damage to get rid of the enemies that you're currently fighting, because the multiplier will increase to 39%. And since the goal for more defense is to get a lot of energy shield on top of your life, this can get quite important. Here you can also see the hypothermia, which is the reason why you want some cold damage on your Storm Brand, so you can chill the enemies. In one of your weapons, you want Smite, an attack that grants huge added lightning damage, but it forces us into using Scepters, which is no big deal, since Scepters can roll for the most part the same things as Wands can roll, and the Doriani's Catalysts are Scepters anyways. Wielding Smite with Fortify, a valuable defensive buff, and increased duration for easy uptime on both the damage and the Fortify buff. I usually only use that skill on bosses, but if you feel like you need more damage or some defense right now, you can use it. Within your other weapon is your Brand Recall. It's a single socket along with cast when damage taken, Sealskin for some defense in the tooling. So you got the 3 sockets, you got the cast when damage taken Steelskin linked, and then you have the Brand Recall not linked to those. Otherwise, you won't be able to self-cast your Brand Recall, which would be bad. In one of your 4 socket items, put a Flame Dash linked with a level 6 Arcane Surge. We keep it at level 6 because you only have to dash once in order to proc it. Also, in that item, Vaal Righteous Fire. It can be linked to the Flame Dash and Arcane Surge, but it doesn't need to. It doesn't matter at all. Use only the Vaal skill as a temporary burst against bosses. Do not use the regular skill, because this will rapidly draw all your life and mana, or not life and energy shield, and you will die. So only use the Vaal skill. The 4th item in here, which is not linked, so it's a solo socket, or it can be linked to the Vaal Righteous Fire, but just don't link it at all. It's easiest, is a precision level 1. It just grants you some crit chance for close to no mana reservation. Within your second 4 socket item is a 4-linked Orb of Storms with Curse on Hit and Assassin's Mark. Assassin's Mark is a strong crit buff for you against these enemies, and also link it with Calling Strike to execute bosses below 10% health. The last 4-link is your mana reservation. Herald of Thunder for some damage, and Flesh and Stone and Sand Stance for defense. Zealotry over Wrath, because the additional crit chance and the effect to spawn consecrated ground below enemies, which, by the way, consecrated ground applies a higher chance to crit enemies standing on top of it. Was it correct? I think that was correct. So it synergizes well with your Ascendancy. You want to link all of them with an enlighten support. The thing is, if you don't have a high level enlighten, you have to leave out either Herald of Thunder or Flesh and Stone, depending if you want to lose some damage or some defense. If you've seen other build guides I made, you probably noticed that pretty much always there is a mapping and a bossing setup. Because I like to be efficient, and to be efficient for most abilities, you simply want to have a mapping and a bossing setup. So in this case, there's just a really small difference. I only recommend changing to the bossing setup against really strong enemies, so don't bother swapping out anything during any mapping situation or anything. So yeah, here's what you want to go for. In maps, you go for the chain support. The additional chains mean that when your Storm Brand is on top of an enemy, it usually chains to 3 different enemies, like each time. 3 zaps. The increased chaining actually sends out more beams, so it's essentially a area damage or area of effect multiplier, if you want to say so. And since you don't need the area of effect against bosses, you want to change the chain support to hypothermia for another damage multiplier. This only works if you have the before mentioned added cold damage, preferably crafted on your ring. Also against bosses, if This situation allows it to get close, place your Orb of Storms on top of that to get the Assassin's Mark and the Execute, and also use the Smite to get the Fortify and the added damage buff. Whenever you have enough Vaal Souls for your Vaal Righteous Fire, you can also use that against tough enemies, but you want to be careful because once you use it, it will actually drain 30% of your maximum life and energy shield. So don't use it in an extremely dangerous situation because it can kill you. And now, the last thing as in every build guide, the Pantheon, which is a super nice mechanic in the game and makes the game really good. Yeah, but hey, in this build actually, if you have problems with chaos damage, you can take Arakali as major and Shakari as minor. This helps a lot, especially early on if you don't have a lot of chaos resistance. Otherwise, I like to play with Brine King for the stun resistance or the stun recovery, and Garukan for movement speed as a minor god. And there you go. This is my most favorite build of all time. I played it on pretty much every single Ascendancy you can play it on, but the Inquisitor is just too strong. So I've been playing the Inquisitor version for 3 or 4 leagues now, I'm not sure. I believe it was 3. And before I send you over to my Awakener level 8 kill, I want to ask you something. In this video, I tried to go away from the script, or not totally away, but a little bit away from the script and talk more freely. This means that obviously my voice is different and how I'm acting in the video is different, and also the length of the video will be different. It will be much longer than any other build guide because I'm not only just throwing out fact after fact after fact, but I'm just talking a little bit freely. So I really appreciate if you put your kind of like your comments down in the section, so I know if you like this style of the video or if you like it more if I'm just straight to the point, give you all the facts you need within 10 to 12 minutes and then you have to build. Or if you like it if it's a little bit more easygoing. I hope you understand what I mean. So yeah, sound off in the comments down below. I really appreciate any feedback there. Also, leave a like and subscribe for future content. And please follow my Twitch. I'll be streaming there during the beginning of every league. And during the leagues, probably as well, but I don't know. But it would be nice to see you there. If you have any questions, I'll gladly try to answer them either on stream or down in the comments below. So, have fun with my Awakener level 8 kill. Thank you very much for watching. I am Jay, and I'm out.
What's this? A real challenge? You've finally caught my attention. Die.
Your lives are meaningless! Fury of the cosmos! Obliteration! Creation itself! Wow.
The others found strength in their projections. They became reliant on them. I am not so foolish.
This city is nothing! Why resist? Glorious flames! Rain of stars!
Is life really interesting enough to warrant all this pain?
Beyond, there is only...
Be silent. Die.
This city is nothing! Why resist? Be utterly annihilated! Glorious flames! Fury of the cosmos!
Do you yet see the futility of your efforts? Die.
Beyond, there is only horror. Why run? What's the point? Obliteration! Fury of the cosmos! Nothingness. Be utterly annihilated! Fury!
On the edge of death, my heart races. I am alive. Feel the thrill of
The void! I have seen beyond! Die! Everlasting fire!
My mana is spent.
I felt something